As always, Poonam, you are a very hard act to follow. You did a great job, so please, Poonam, thank you. All right, great job. For those of you who are just joining back with us online, thank you for tuning in into our event, Back to School with the Every Student Succeeds Act, Connecting Opportunities to Low-Income Students. My name is Stephen McCullough, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer and co-interim CEO of Community Schools at the National Office. So, thank you. I want to introduce you also to my co-partner in crime, Deborah Montanino, who's the Chief Strategy Officer. And then finally, just want to acknowledge and thank all the staff at the National Office for putting together a great event. So, well done. In 40 years, Communities in Schools has become the nation's largest dropout prevention organization, but we have miles to go before every child has an equal shot at a quality education because of barriers like poverty and lack of resources. Because of this, we are lifting up 10 CIS affiliates who represent rural, urban, and suburban communities. And so I have a great job today, so I get to announce these organizations. Watched the Emmys last night, and I'm ready to roll. So these growth and impact communities, and this is what we're calling them, will receive strategic investments over the next 3 years from the National Office for Research, Practice, and Growth Opportunities. The end goal for this endeavor will be to highlight what works so that the entire education field will gain added insights into best practices in engaging students, schools, and their local communities. 3 impact communities. So I hope you're excited, and as we are. The 3 impact communities, CIS of Charleston. Yes. CIS of San Antonio. Yay. And CIS of Charlotte-Mecklenburg. These impact communities were selected for being models of excellence in how they serve the needs of students that show they may be at greater risk for dropping out. They will be used as research centers to help pilot new initiatives and conduct studies showing how effective use of integrated student supports helps students stay in school and graduate. There are 7 CIS affiliates that were selected to be growth communities and will receive strategic investments and technical assistance from the national office to expand to as many as 10 more schools throughout their communities. They include CIS of Houston, CIS of Northwest Michigan, CIS of Chicago, CIS of Benton Franklin, Washington State, CIS of Mid-America, serving Kansas City, Missouri, CIS of Indiana, and CIS of North Carolina, serving Rocky Mount, North Carolina. So, in order to move this along, and I want to introduce the panel because that will be a direct tie to the growth and impact work that we're going to be conducting over the next few years. 3 of these communities are featured on the next panel to discuss the impact of communities in schools. Colleen Bohrmann currently serves as the Executive Director for Learning Support Services in the Northeast Independent School District serving San Antonio. Welcome. Mary Runyon is the Associate Superintendent of Learning Services at Charleston County Public School. We're fortunate to say that our partnership with them in its 28th year. Charleston County School District is the 2nd largest school system in South Carolina, representing a unique blend of urban, suburban, and rural schools that span 1,000 square miles of coastal lands. CCSD serves more than 50,000 students in 86 schools and several specialized programs. And finally, there may not be a better person to talk about the impact of CIS than a CIS alumnus. This panel will be moderated by Ray Saldaña, a former CIS student and current council member of San Antonio. Ray was first elected Talking about a rock star. Ray was first elected to serve as San Antonio City Council member for District 4 on May 14th, 2011. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Ray, and thank you.
Good morning. Is this, I think we're working? Oh, I've been instructed to turn it on, which would probably be helpful. Okay, everybody can hear me now? Yes. Great, good morning. Well, it is great to be in Washington, D.C., and it's great to be up here with some great panelists. Let me first start off by saying it is not bad to be in a room full of, as Elaine described, EdD Geeks. It's the first time I've heard the term, and I think there are worse things to be. And I'm so grateful that we get to be here to talk about a subject for which, let me stop and pause to say first that somebody needs to show gratitude for the many folks who are EdD Geeks, not only the EdD Geeks in the room here, but those who have been advocates for education long before we got to the point here. Some of you all have been doing this, as I'm looking towards Bill, for several decades. And what that means is that you get to see the fruits of your labor, not only in students like myself, but the thousands of other students throughout the entire country that are going to benefit from the programs, the services, and really at the end of the day, the sweat equity that you put into this passion and to this service. So on behalf of 1,000 other students who oftentimes get the description of, we've already heard a few of these titles, at risk, Title I, free and reduced lunch, English language learners, students in low-income communities. I think I've hit probably most of the boxes in my own box, but really at the end of the day, we're normal students who, it's interesting, as we were talking a little bit this morning, we say we're all students who are at risk, and we're at risk of reaching our potential. And I've now moved out of the at risk of graduating into at risk, as I'm an elected official now, and I'm in D.C. At risk here in a city where there's a lot of risk to be had. But I want to say again, tremendously grateful on behalf of thousands of other students throughout the country who are getting to see their potential realized because you all check in and out every single day of work. So let's go ahead and take the conversation down from where Poonam started us, which is high level, the federal stakes as ESSA is rolled out, and talk about what integrated student support services are like on the ground. And to do that, we have a few folks who are coming from different chapters throughout the country. And so luckily we have somebody here from San Antonio, so I feel just right at home with Colleen. And Ms. Runyon from Charleston County Public Schools. And there was a third person that's in your backup material, and that was Ann Clark from Charlotte-Mecklenburg. And you should really take a look at her bio, because if you could build a superintendent, you would use it using all the pieces that are in her resume. So we won't have her as part of the conversation today, but what we'd like to do is get kicked off and talk a little bit about what's going on the ground for a lot of our students who are really looking towards adults to be that mentor in their life. So I'm going to start with Colleen, and we're going to talk a little bit about, tell us a little bit about the population you serve. I'll set the stage here. With both of these individuals up on stage, we've got close to over 100,000 students being represented, with close to 60,000 at Northeast Independent School District in San Antonio and 50,000 in Charleston. So tell us about the population that you serve, and tell us about the need and why you chose to partner with Communities in Schools.
Absolutely. But before I get started, is he not wonderful? This one, CIS grad, went off to Stanford, and he comes back home and represents District 4, his home.
Yeah.
His heart for kids is amazing. So thank you, Ray, for being here. So proud of you. Y'all are in San Antonio. Northeast Independent School District, 68,000 kids. Whoa, right? 68,000. Our population has changed. We started in 1950 as a rural school district, and now we're suburban urban. The last couple years, we've changed. Our demographics has changed. We're about 50% low income. And so the strategies that we've had to employ have had to change. We've been an extremely high-performing school district. I was a principal for 16 years. We were the #1 school in the state, as noted by Texas Monthly. So we're extremely high-performing. Sometimes when you become high-performing, you don't always want to really dig down and look any deeper than what, you're up here. So we had to dig a little bit deeper and really take a look at our needs. As our demographics changed, our programming had to change, our curriculum had to change. We're so excited about ESSA and what ESSA has to bring, because no longer, if you know, the state of Texas is the best ever, right?
That's true.
We're big and bad. Oh, yeah. But our accountability system is just based on the facts. It's not about the 360 child that we represent in Northeast Independent School District. So in Northeast, with ESSA, we're excited about the ability to bring that non-cognitive skills to our classrooms and to our schools. No longer when we fill out those big, long documents that we all have to fill out. We're all policy people, Leah. We have to fill out those policy papers that say, what is your root cause? And we mark on there chronic absenteeism, poverty, hunger, but the remedy has been instructional changes. Don't match up. With ESSA and that flexibility, being able to come down to the district and to the campus level, we now can look at those root causes and say, the root cause is chronic absenteeism. Let's put a program in for root cause. Let's put some things in for dropout prevention at risk, and look at the non-cognitive side of our kiddos. So in Northeast, that's kind of where we are right now with the work that we're doing. We're very excited about being an impact community. We've got the whole entourage over here, Jessica Weaver and group. We're very excited. We're excited to be that think tank for CIS, that group that can say, you know what, we tried this, we're trying this, it might work. And when we have the opportunity to talk about funding sources, which we'll get to, we'll talk to you about some just some unique ways that Northeast funds CIS. So Northeast in a nutshell.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
And Mary?
And Charleston County is indeed a large county. We have 86 schools. We have a population that is 46% Caucasian, 40% African American, 8% Hispanic, 3.2% other, and we are a very changing and dynamic school district. Most recently, we have seen businesses such as Boeing, Volvo, Daimler, Mercedes come to our area, and consequently, we have to look at things differently as well. South Carolina has the profile of a South Carolina graduate that includes world-class knowledge, world-class skills, and those characteristics and life skills that are required to make students college and career ready. And that's a huge focus. We are so thrilled to have the Impact Grant that will help us move that dynamic one step further. Heretofore, we have also looked at curriculum, and we have looked at teachers, and those have been the leverages that we've used to try and make a difference. Response to intervention, looking at all of the intervention strategies, and having been a special educator for many, many years, using some of those same things, reversing them and trying to put them in as those interventions. And have they worked? No, not necessarily. We still have a huge achievement gap. Teachers cannot do it alone. They can't. And we need those families to partner with us. We need the community. We need the integration and alignment of everything that we can offer our students. And so the Impact Grant for us is going to be very, very significant. We will look at families and be able to have a way to have that flexibility to draw that network in a larger circle. Another arena that I think is so important about ESSA is that not only the flexibility, but the ability to customize to the needs of the communities that we serve. One size does not fit all, and we know that. We've seen that over the years, and we've probably wasted a lot of time, effort, and money to still end up with an achievement gap. So we know our guidance counselors in South Carolina have a ratio of 1 to 300, but it really translates to about 1 to 400, whereas our case managers have a caseload of 1 to 40. They're able to do deep dives into building those relationships, those interpersonal relationship skills with students that include mentoring, include tutoring, connecting them with resources in our community that are necessary for families to flourish and to make that college and career readiness more of a reality than it has been in the past. The ability to look at social and emotional skills and to build on that so that students feel safe in their school environment. They feel confident and capable of doing the work that we're asking them to do. And the ability to help our teachers and guidance counselors and school staff to make sure that we are closing that achievement gap. We're delighted to have the opportunity to work with communities and schools, and we have for 28 years. Most recently, and I'd like to share just one little snippet with you, we met at an inner city school. We have urban, rural, very inner city. But at an inner city school, we had a young lady who was very poised, very confident, very articulate, stand on the stage with all of the Olympic regalia. And she told the story of having come up through our school system and without the mentoring, tutoring, and support that she received, and she was a case-managed student by communities and schools, she would never have had the opportunity to stand before us and share her story. She began as a mediocre student and gravitated to working with the shot put and eventually earned a college scholarship and went on to become a champion in the United States. And now she's 5th in the world because her competition, Raven Sanders, did a phenomenal job at the Olympics. And to see an audience full of students that are at risk, but I call them our opportunity students, hear her talk about taking advantage of everything that they have before them, taking advantage and building the relationships with their counselors and their mentors through communities and schools was an awe-inspiring time for us, and to see where it took her. So she's a sophomore now in Mississippi, and we look for great things from Raven, but more importantly, the inspiration that she brings, that every student can have that same opportunity, and we are very pleased to look forward to that.
Thank you, Mary, for that snippet of a story. And actually, we've got, I think, our third panelist who showed up, Miss Ann Clark. And Ann, as we were describing, you've got what seems to be is a comic book-like resume for a superhero created into a superintendent. So we're really grateful that you can join us here today. And just to jump off of a little bit of what Mary was describing, I want to transition to a question which is why communities in schools and how does it supplement academic goals? And we'll start with Ann, who might be able to give us a quick snapshot of some of her work and then jump into that question. But let me first say, and pause and stop for a second, because it's important to talk about, at the end of the day, a lot of the work that we're doing, and I'll share my own personal story in this. At the end of the day, what we're trying to do and make possible for our young students in each one of our respective school districts is that they achieve the American dream. And I say that that's particularly personal for me because my father was undocumented when he came to the U.S. in 1980. And it's worth pointing out that when he received his citizenship in the early 90s, it was him holding that paper and saying that he had finally had access to the American dream, not for him, but for his children, that really meant a lot to get to see and hear him discuss in that way the fact that the American dream, and at least in his case, is this relay. What I stop to think about now that I'm older is that the idea of the American dream, the idea of public education in this country, really relies on our schools and our public institutions. In my case, my father and my mother, who never made it past the 8th grade, couldn't show me the way to get to college or couldn't show me the way to get to high school graduation, as much as I would have loved to have conversations about how is it that you apply to college, what do you do when you fail your first test as a freshman. Those opportunities to have those conversations are not always in the homes of the students that we care about. So it was incredibly important for me to be part of communities in schools. And I was case managed, and Miss Bell, we say that one size doesn't fit all, but at least one adult can change a student's life, and I think that's an important element of communities in schools. So I've gotten to realize my potential because of communities in schools, but you all must have a number of different reasons as well that you've seen through practice and through anecdote. But Ann, we'll start with you. Tell us a little bit about why you chose communities in schools as a partner, and a little bit about the population that you serve, don't you?
Absolutely. Well, we chose communities and schools a long time ago, like 25 years ago. So it has been a long-standing partnership, even when we've gone through the economic crisis in 2008 through 10, and we're a banking city, so you can imagine that could have been an opportunity for us to re-examine as a district and a community our investment in communities and schools, and we actually deepened that investment rather than reduced it. And it's exactly what you said. It's about having a personal advocate for every student. And we've learned a lot from communities in schools over the last 25 years, and they have continued to be committed to a continuous improvement model so that we could have those tough conversations around, do we go deep in a few number of schools or do we go wide in a large number of schools? And we continue to wrestle with that, but at the end of the day, it is about that personal advocate. And particularly in the last 6 years, we've really pressed communities and schools particularly hard to take on some of our students with the greatest need for opportunity in our district, and not to work with our juniors and seniors, but to start working with our ninth graders where that light is not very bright at the end of the tunnel. And as a result, we've gone in the last 6 years from a graduation cohort rate of 66% to 89.6%. Which for a district with 60% poverty and 5,000 homeless children is quite an accomplishment. And I would say Communities and Schools has been our strongest partner in that effort. But I would also say they have helped the district lead an all-in community effort around graduation cohort rate. You would not be able to find too many people in Charlotte that don't know we're focused on the graduation rate and literacy. Those two things are our focus, and our whole community has rallied around a deeper investment in communities and schools, but also really strategic alignment of all the community resources around getting our students to a diploma. And then we've set a goal in CMS that 100% of our graduates will graduate with either an industry credential or an academic credential beyond that high school diploma. So we want our community to not only be proud of an 89.6 graduation rate, but we also want them to know that that diploma prepares a student for college and or career. And so beginning with the class of 2018, our goal is to have 100% of our students graduating, which is an incredibly important milestone, but it is only an important milestone if that diploma readies that student for his or her next step. So we'll be leaning even more heavily on communities and schools to help support their students and the site coordinators, their caseload, to make sure those students have one of those or both credentials as they graduate.
Great. Thank you, Ann. And Mary, maybe I can pitch to you the same question of how CIS complements a lot of the academic goals that you might have in Charleston.
Well, in Charleston, we're likewise focused on that college and career readiness. It's a pipeline, okay? We have to begin early. We have to begin in our kindergarten programs, building that readiness piece, moving it into elementary, middle, and high, because it's too late to begin for us at the ninth grade. So it's very important that our communities and schools are in our elementary schools, they are working in our middle schools, and we appreciate that because they have the leverage of doing many things that we can't do. Our teachers are bound in the classroom, indeed, with 27, 28, 30, and sometimes more students, whereas the case managers work with our multi-tiered support system teams, identify those children and families that have the greatest needs, and that's where they can begin the nucleus of their work. So without them, honestly, I don't know where we would be in many of our schools and many of our communities. I can honestly say that our principals, our teachers, our guidance counselors depend on them a lot because of the leverage they have, the networking they have in our community, the resources they're able to tap into, and especially because of the deep relationships trusting relationships that they're able to build with our families and with our students.
Well, Mary brought up twice now a point that I think is worth really delving into, which is the idea that so much of the current existing staff at each one of our school districts are so overburdened with these ratios of 300, 400 students to one. And I think even if I think in my own experience, we would have been lucky if it was 500 to 1. And with the population of students who, in many cases, like mine, with students who grow up in poverty or below the poverty line, there are so many other things that encompass a life from the day we wake up, or the time we wake up, the time we go to sleep. To run into somebody who is trained, who is going to deeply care about your future and say that they believe in you, can be can have a tremendous impact. We just don't create those collisions enough when the ratios are that high. So I appreciate Mary really talking about that. So Colleen, do you want to chime in?
Yes, that'd be an excellent lead-in for where I wanted to go. Collaboration in Northeast is really, really important. We're very blessed. We use our Title I funds to purchase family specialists. And that collaboration with our communities and schools, case manager, site manager, and our family specialist, and our counselor. So we really pour our money into that non-cognitive area. And those three work in collaboration to really case manage our students. And as we've added CIS campuses, sometimes they say, why are you adding that one? Don't we have a family specialist already that can assist with us? Our answer is there's always need. I think you said the millions of children that are in poverty, and there's never enough hands. And so, but collaboratively, we really worked on ensuring that we're effective with all of the resources that we have on our campus.
Right. Well, here's a question that I think some folks, either in the audience or who are watching online, might want to. We want to get into the brass tacks. How are you paying for communities and schools? So the question is does your district fund communities and schools, and what methods do you look at in terms of for ways to increase that funding? And maybe we'll start with Ann or Mary, whoever wants to take.
Sure. We have 3 funding streams for our communities investment in communities and schools. So I wouldn't just say it's a district investment. Our county has had a long-standing investment in communities and schools. Our district has as well underneath our student services budget. So we are not using our Title I funds to support communities and schools. However, we do have family advocates that are positions funded by Title I that work in a similar fashion to what it sounds like is happening in your district. So, and then our community makes a huge investment in communities and schools. So through private corporations, foundations, and individual contributions, we're able to fund additional site coordinators beyond what the county and the school district invest.
And we rely a lot on Title I funds. However, tried it United Way, industry, private donations. I don't think there are many people in Charleston that wouldn't recognize the name Communities and Schools. The marketing of it is deep and broad and very, very positive. So it's a combination of funding sources and streams that go into making it work.
Big shout out, Jessica Weaver, CEO of San Antonio. This one has helped us grow our funding sources. We are very blessed to have Rackspace Cloud Management in the city of San Antonio, and they support 7 of our campuses. We also have Pre-K for SA, which is City of San Antonio grant that we receive $1 million for, and the focus of that funding is straight up early childhood pre-K. Wow. And we brought CIS into the early childhood to begin that pipeline. Of course, we use our Title I money as well, and then also state comp ed funds, state compensatory ed funds. So it is a combination of funding. And I guess the question on the last panel was, how do you do that? It's really helping people understand the priority, that that's a need. That identifying those needs and saying, hey, this is how we can fund it. But Jessica Weaver helping to educate all of us on about the importance of it, and then where can we receive some additional funds. She's also an excellent grant writer.
Yeah, let me just say, now that I'm on this side of the table, I'm a student who took advantage of anything and everything. My family took advantage of anything and everything that was free. Free swimming lessons, free English language learning, summer camps, never knowing how all of these things get funded. So let me just say, big shout out, God bless grant writers and development specialists whom I will never meet, I've been a patchwork of a bunch of free services my entire life. But all that to say in jest, but in all seriousness, it really is the investment that at the end of the day, that's why we're staying up late for these grant writing sessions. That's why we are fundraising, because we believe not only in reaching a fundraising goal or funding a specific program, but we believe in the consequences or the outcomes of those programs. So thank you to a lot of folks who I may never meet. So I want to ask this quick question, then we're going to bounce to audience questions. So something that's not talked about often is the impact of CIS on teachers and principals, existing teachers and principals. Can you talk about the impact of CIS on the educators on your campuses? Why don't we start with Colleen? We'll go this way. And then.
Pressure me, huh?
Oh, that's right. The
I was a
pressure is on the
principal
San
16
Antonio
years,
folks.
principal 16 years, so it's right up my alley. What we find is we have to, I think the first panel talked about capacity. And what we found is in order to sell that CIS model to a principal, we had to really measure their capacity to be able to manage it, to understand it, and value what CIS would bring to the campus. And so at a campus level, it's really helping our principals understand it and helping them understand how to manage that resource so that you're most effective with it.
Well, as a principal, I was not blessed with that luxury of having CIS in my school. However, my son has been. My daughter-in-law has been a guidance counselor for many years in schools that have had CIS. And I always hear the dinnertime conversation that they feel so fortunate because these people are so invested. The marketing folks, Jane Riley Gambrell, who goes out into the community and hunts down resources with a laser. And the benefit that they see in terms of being able to know that there is someone that they can turn to for resources in the community, for those additional things in their school that they need, has been magnificent. I just can't say enough. And the consistency of the staff, they don't go away. They are the same people that have the passion for doing the work they do. And when they are in the same community for many years, they get to know the families, and that bond of trust just permeates that community. So we begin to depend on them tremendously. Wish I had it in my high school, that's for sure.
So having been a principal in our district for 19 years, I can tell you that the success of communities in schools completely depends on the building level principal and his or her commitment to the fidelity of the model. We have integrated the site coordinator into our student services team, and that is both a joy and a pain point because the site coordinator is such a valued member of the team that we have to work really hard to make sure our principals don't stray from the role that the site coordinator needs to play. I would say universally our principals value the role. But if that case manager is truly to case manage, they can't be on lunch duty and out on the bus parking lot unless they're interacting with a student on their caseload. And so we have to fight pretty hard. Marion Yates is here representing CIS Charlotte, and she spends a good bit of her time as a former principal in the district helping principals understand the value of fidelity and faithfulness to the model. Our results show that. But oftentimes we have a principal that has to be reminded of that. But certainly our teachers completely get that our counselors have caseloads over 500 students each, which is an absurd opportunity to personalize counseling. And so they know the value of that site coordinator to support attendance, grades, and keep that student on a pathway for success. So our teachers are incredibly enthusiastic about communities and schools.
Thank you for that. Thank you for the reminder that letting professionals do their job. And I know that that's something that folks are having to constantly deal with at the school level. So let's open it up here for a few questions from the audience. And while we find the first person, I actually have a good question here that we'll kick it off with before we find our first audience member. So we'll start with you, Ann. This is a question. What keeps you up at night, and what are you doing to address it?
Wow. Less about communities and schools. I sleep very well knowing that communities and schools is our partner. And I imagine most superintendents are supposed to say student achievement and closing the achievement gap, and that would ultimately be my answer. But what I am most concerned about for our nation and public education is our teacher pipeline. I worry greatly about the future of public education in terms of having young people that want to choose this amazing vocation as their life's work. And I think it is incumbent on all the adults, including those in the room, to think really thoughtfully about what tape plays in their head when a young person says, I want to be a teacher. Because I think the young people I talk to are not getting great adult messages from the adults in their lives that matter, that teaching is a good choice. We have a valedictorian at one of our high schools who shared with her pastor that she had stopped telling people she wanted to be a teacher because she got so discouraged by the response, because she was valedictorian and she was so bright and she could do so many different things. Why was she going to be a teacher? That was the message that played for one of the top students in our high schools who has wanted to be a teacher since middle school. So that's just one example. But at the end of the day, I think we all are clear that everyone except for a teacher is in support of teachers and what happens in the classroom. So our communities and school site coordinators, our principals, it's all about the magic of the classroom. And so if we don't have great teachers and we don't have a pipeline. And in North Carolina, we're down 30% in terms of the young people choosing the College of Ed as they enter as freshmen, which I'm sure can't be too different from what the nation is seeing. So probably a bit of a surprise answer, but I think it's one that is keeping me up at night.
And thank you for that approach. Does anybody else want to tackle that question?
Well,
What keeps you
that's
up at
interesting
night?
because teachers were going to be my response as well. And I worry about them probably from a perspective that public sentiment toward public education and news media is not very kind. It's not a healthy environment to work in. Teachers are looked upon as having the magic to do all things, and we know that that can't happen. They're bound in their classrooms, and therefore they're not able to reach out to the public, and it's very difficult for them. The culture of media toward public education is not one that's healthy at this point in time, at least in Charleston. And we can't solve all of the problems quickly because we are wearing many hats. We're the social worker. Teachers are to deliver instruction that's motivating and engaging. And yet when any data is presented, and it is presented quite frequently, there's blame rather than looking at it as the point of starting to move forward and what are we going to do to make that happen. So at night I do worry about that. If I could change one element, I would turn the dial and change that immediately.
On the approach, right. So, Colleen, tell us about what
I
keeps you
totally
up at
agree
night.
with teachers. And the other group that I'm concerned about is our building principals. That leadership void that we're beginning to experience in our district, the lack of experience going into the principalship, and then that the toolbox that they have. And so I pray for them. I worry about them. It's a big job for each of our building principals to be sure that they're doing all the things they need to do to help sure every kid gets a great education every day. And so another group.
Thank you, Colleen. Question from the audience? Got one back here.
Brian from Communities and Schools, Pennsylvania. Thank you for taking the time to be here to support communities and schools and the work we do. Oftentimes when we go to new schools, or we meet new superintendents and principals, one of the things we wish is we had one of you with us to sort of validate our work and talk about it. And we do refer to some of our successful sites, but what are some things we can be doing at the level of superintendents or building principals that are new to CIS so they better understand our impact and our work besides what we may traditionally provide them? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, I think it's a numbers game, and you're going to get, having been an elementary, middle, and high school principal, and now a district superintendent. I think it's really show me the numbers, and show me a school that looks similar to my profile, or a district that looks similar to my profile, and the impact that the CIS model has had. I also think, as a superintendent, I'm looking for nimbleness and flexibility. So I want to hear that you want to continuously improve and that you're open to adjusting the model to meet the needs of the students in our district. And that is something that CIS Charlotte has done an extraordinary job of doing over a 25-year period of time. The model today looks very little like the one of the past. The personalization of the relationship with the students has been the constant, but the approach, the number of students, the number of site coordinators per school, the support team that surrounds that CIS site coordinator have all changed and evolved in great ways. So I think nimbleness, but I also would say back to CIS that you need to hold us accountable as well for fidelity of the model. And when that's not happening, that needs to be lifted up to the principal first and to the district office second, because that's the magic of the model.
Another big thing for us is the relationship, that trusting relationship. Northeast 4 years ago, we had four campuses, and we're now at 14. And that's because of the relationship that we have built with the CEO, Jessica Weaver. She spends time with us. All we have to say, whether it's positive news, we meet on a regular basis. We meet 4 times a year with all of our principals, and we talk about the issues at that campus. If it's not working, let us know immediately. We'll fix it. And it goes back to that fidelity, but that trusting relationship and building that relationship with CIS, and knowing that when a problem arises or there's celebrations, that we're all in this together.
I would also add that I want to hear that CIS is a partner. This is not what I would call a vendor relationship where we execute a contract and you provide services. This is a partnership. So if we're having a community-wide conversation or a superintendent search or whatever's going on, or student assignment conversations, I'm going to expect to see, as I do, the CIS executive director and team present as a partner. If we're having a huge focus on literacy, I expect that CIS coordinator or executive to be saying, what's our role in this? And that is what has sustained a 25-year relationship with communities and schools in Charlotte, is because it is not a vendor relationship, and it is a partnership. And a partnership means you're at the table not just when it's about your business, but when it's about the district's business and about kids' business.
Great point. Thank you, Ann. Take a second question.
Thank you for being here. Quickly, do you have vendors or partners with other ISS providers in your district? If yes, then how did you make those decisions?
So other organizations like communities and schools?
I think of JAG, City Year, pick a number.
We do. We have sort of a non-negotiable, as we fondly call it in Charlotte, that if you're going to be in a partnership relationship and have a memorandum of understanding, that there are some non-negotiables of that relationship, which I really sort of articulated in answering the other question. But we try to make sure that we're not duplicating services. Or we have 168 schools, so we certainly have plenty of need in a district with 60% poverty, and communities and schools is not even in all of our Title I schools at this point. So plenty of opportunity that we can be very strategic. One of the things we try to do is make sure we're aligning time, people, and money in a very targeted, strategic way. And so, yes, we have Big Brothers, Big Sisters, Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, Right Moves for Youth, a number of organizations that we work with, none as deeply as communities and schools in terms of the numbers, but certainly, yes, we do.
Go ahead.
Yes, we do have other relationships. We do have a really high expectation for our partners. We come together annually with all of our partners, and the data, we talk about the data. And if they're not hitting the data marks, we will say we're not going to be in a relationship with you. And so if you're a nonprofit, we have high expectations for ourselves, for our kiddos, and we have those same expectations for our nonprofits. Money is tight. We have to prioritize. We need nonprofits who can make a difference for our kiddos every day.
And we have the same. We really do want to align all of those factors, looking at the data, looking at the needs of the schools. the partnerships need to understand the goals of the schools, the goals of the district, and right now the focus is on literacy in both numeracy and in reading. So it's very important that we don't spin our wheels, that the time is used very wisely, particularly when students are pulled out of class and they're missing instructional time. We have to make sure that there is a quality of service being offered to them during that time. So we're cautious with that.
Thank you, Mary. We have time for one more question.
As we pivot toward the implementation of ESSA, what are the ways in which you envision communities and schools supporting your implementation to ensure student success?
Well, I think in order to make that student success very real and to have the outcomes and results that we can not only applaud but measure, it's going to take a deep collaborative effort to make sure that we're all on the same page. We understand the same expectations, we understand the parameters, and that we bring teachers into the fold so that they too will understand. Typically, our administrators are very much involved with that, but it's the teachers that we need to bring on board. We're bringing 5 new schools on board with the grant, and so there's going to have to be some training and education so that that collaboration is meaningful and consistent.
Well, I'm going to stop it there and say thank you for that last question. I think it was a tough one because I think it's probably what is the theme of the next few days for the group who's in the room, which is the idea that, you know, I serve on the city council in San Antonio, and we oftentimes get some federal mandates that at the end of the day, they decouple themselves on the way down to the city, where we're implementing them in ways that perhaps were not part of the theory at the top. To speak to Ann's point, that sometimes, you know, you work on things implementing on the ground, and sometimes you realize it's the principal leader and making sure that they are producing the program, CIS in this case, with fidelity, and they're not doing lunch duty, but they're working on case managers. And so we see that sometimes, and I think that's a tough question for us all to be able to grapple with. Somebody once said that education and the achievement gap, it's not rocket science, that it's harder than that. So I think that's true. In many cases, though, we have a lot of ideas about where we know students exist, where the zip codes that we know we want to focus our attention, where the students are that meet certain criteria with respect to at risk or Title I or free and reduced lunch. These are the folks who are doing it on the ground, and they've got the lessons learned, the battle scars to prove it, and I'm so glad and grateful. So if you can, please, in showing them a debt of gratitude, please, a round of applause for them for joining us here today. Thank you, and then we'll transition. We've got a short break.
Yep.
See?
First, I want to thank everyone online for joining us this morning. We're going to transition to our CIS internal meeting, invite you to lunch, but on behalf of Elaine and Bill and the rest of the National Board of Directors, thank you for joining us this morning. So thank you all.
I'm proud of you.